going to ask you a few questions about climate change and biodiversity. Okay, what is your understanding of climate change?
My understanding of climate change is global warming and the greenhouse effect, which global warming is simply the earth heating up, and the greenhouse effect is caused by um, more gases released into the air, example carbon dioxide.
My next question is, how has climate change affected living things around you?
The previous year during this time it was cold season, and what happened, we had to wear cardigans. This year it's so hot we don't even wear cardigans because of global warming, and this year it's very dry during the time where it should be raining and very cold, and you have to you have to water the plant 2 times in a day, and last year you just had to water it once and it will be alright for at least a week. This year if you water it in an hour it will be dry. It will be dried in few seconds. Thank you. There are so many natural disasters now which are making plants and animals die.
Do you feel there are more organisms when your parents were children? I repeat that question. Do you feel there were more organisms when your parents were children, or there are more organisms now?
When my parents were children, I think there were more organisms.
Can you explain why?
Because at that time there was less carbon dioxide released into the air, which did not have that much global warming, and that time everyone was interested in planting and growing stuff. At that time everyone was growing their own food instead of buying it from the market. That's why nowadays forests are being cut down for accommodation places, and now rivers, creeks and all these places are being used for hotels, like ocean view hotels and some other places like high in the mountains. They cut down trees, they destroy habitats of organisms.
How can children of your age group help sustain organisms and retain biodiversity?
By growing their own food, by using buses instead of vehicles, by using bags instead of plastic bags, saving energy, planting trees, releasing less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
What is your understanding of climate change?
Climate change is change in weather patterns and the overall temperature of Earth.
How has climate change affected living things?
Since the temperature of Earth has increased, the climate, the weather is much more hotter, and plants and animals, they are struggling to survive.
Do you feel there were more organisms when your parents were children, or there are more organisms now? Please explain.
There were more organisms when our parents were in our age. Today there are less organisms, and because like for some of the organisms like crabs, starfish and all, our parents used to see them more often, but we see them hardly, like once in a while.
How can people of your age group help sustain organisms and retain biodiversity?
For us, we can use 3R, reuse, recycle and reduce. We can use that method to reduce the level of pollution, and since we are practicing in school, that's the way we can help uh, our environment.
Foremost, we travel to first landing. As you can see from the video, this part of the marine ecosystem has not been reclaimed. You can find some organisms here in their natural habitat, though they are not as many as they used to be due to climate change and human influence. Organisms such as sea urchin, sea cucumber, and the vibrant-looking starfish still thrive in this area, though the nearby construction might prove to be a survival challenge in the near future. As we take a walk alongside the beach, we find two men fishing using nets. This also contributes to the overall influence that humans have on the ecosystem. Now we visit Wailoaloa Beach. Talking to a concerned citizen, here is what he has to say.
The effect of human activities on the fragile balance of the ecosystem could not be more apparent than it is on Wailoaloa Beach in Nadi. A major tourist attraction owing to its extensive stretch of pitch black sand and slew of resorts that line its banks, Wailoaloa Beach has long been a thriving ecosystem of various biodiversities. As its popularity has increased, however, so has development in the area. Massive clearing of land and grading to accommodate the building and establishment of new resorts and assorted tourist paraphernalia is rampant. This surely is causing a change in the lives of organisms who have made the aforementioned area their niche.
Thank you, Rahul, for sharing your views on this matter. Walking along the Wailoaloa Beach, rubbish can be found as far as the eyes can see. Unlike first landing marine ecosystem, the organisms seen here are shore crabs, and those are the only organisms that you can see. And these organisms quickly burrow back into their holes as we approach. The lack of biodiversity is prevalent and makes one think of the adverse effects humans have on the ecosystem and the organisms that used to thrive in it. Disposal of rubbish seems to be a major problem in this area. The rubbish being disposed carelessly not only affects organisms on the shore, but it affects the organisms living in the sea, as well as the birds that fly overhead and depend on the shoreline for food. Looking at biodiversity with respect to plants, we can see that only one type of plant is dominant and is able to survive the harsh environmental conditions. What we have here are flowers and other materials used for religious purposes, which tend to be disposed of in the rivers and the ocean. There is a need to rethink our actions with the changing world. Some religious rituals might have to be amended ever so slightly to save whatever is left of our marine ecosystem. Burning of rubbish, trees, and emissions and smoke from factories as seen here contributes to global warming and consequently the change in the climate, leading to the lack of biodiversity. Fiji is a developing nation, and our tourist sector demands further construction of hotels and resorts. One can only wonder how these developments will further affect the Wailoaloa Beach. On one hand, the newly constructed resorts and buildings brings in more revenue, hence economical development, and on the other hand, we spend a great deal of money trying to save the environment from the effects of human influence and climate change. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Anisha.
What is your understanding of climate change?
Oh, that's a big question, but simple to my understanding that there's a loss of biodiversity. I feel there's like our agriculture yields are decreasing. Like we go to the markets, we hardly ever see any fresh vegetables, but if there is abundant, it will be quite expensive. So that's what I feel about climate change.
Thank you. What has climate change, or how has climate change affected the living things around you?
Oh, looking at where I'm staying, I come from like a suburban area, and there's agriculture fields like sugarcane fields. I don't see much of the cows that we usually see during those days when I was little, because I used to see the Indian farmers bringing the fresh milk in the morning, but that doesn't happen anymore.
Do you feel there were more organisms when you were little, or do we have more organisms now?
In terms of organisms, I think from the ones that are coming from the earth, there are more, like the small miniature ones, like ants. You can see them crawling all over the walls, and those ladybugs, flying moths. Those are just in abundance compared to the big ones that fly in the air.
Thank you. How can people help, or what can they do to sustain the environment and biodiversity?
We're talking about environment. It is our natural resource, and with this natural resource, it creates employment. And for Fiji, it's an agriculture sector dominated country. We need those natural resources to create jobs, so we really need to look after it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.